Good afternoon. This is Rich Nass, and I'm here for this week's segment of 5 Minutes With. This week, I'll be speaking to Grant Pierce, who is the president and CEO of Sonnox. Good afternoon, Grant. How are you?
I'm fine, Rich. How are you?
Fine. Thank you very much. So we have 5 minutes, so let's hop right into this. Sonnox has made some pretty amazing advances in terms of power reduction when we're talking about SoCs. Can you talk about what that would mean to a design engineer?
Well, so if you look at the engineering challenge today in electronics, there are predictions, based on Washington research groups out there that are expecting that we might not have enough energy produced in the world to power all of the computers by as soon as the year 2040. And that's a pretty sobering thought, actually, when it comes to where we have spent, I think, in the engineers' typical design challenge up to now. We've spent a lot of time concentrating on trying to do the most amount of work in the least amount of time. And that's where we concentrated on things like CPUs and their millions of instructions per second. Well, if we're going to run out of power, then we're going to have to find out a way to be far more efficient with our use of power in today's electronics design. So for the engineer going forward, the big challenge is how do I get a lot of work done with the least amount of power? And when we look at the CPU design, it was made as a piece of hardware that was executing software and basically addressing all of the active moments in electronic design. How do we process video? How do we go and take things in and out of memory and essentially execute instructions in the pipeline of a CPU? Well, move forward now. We have to worry about power, and we actually have to design our electronic systems for power. We believe that at Sonnox that the most efficient way to achieve power savings is by applying hardware techniques that essentially interpret and execute on the idle moments of an electronic device. And we find out that if your hardware is fast enough, if like a CPU you can execute on millions of instructions per second and maximize that number, we think there is an opportunity for creating an energy processing unit, an EPU, concentrates on the idle moments and maximizes what we would see as millions of power state changes per second, or what we would call MSPS.
Okay, so you're talking about this at a system level, monitoring
Yes.
at a system level. Okay, because I was a little confused where you were going with that. Okay, so that seems to make a lot of sense. Okay, so now, but just by monitoring the power, that doesn't necessarily save you any power.
No, it's not about monitoring the power. It's actually about trying to harvest out of our electronic design all of the idle moments that represent the opportunity to power off the device.
Okay, and when you're talking about devices, now you're back to the chip level, right?
Yes. So we're looking at both the interaction of the individual blocks in an SoC design, or basically any electronic device. It doesn't have to be an SoC. It might be an advanced sensor. It might be lots of different devices out there. But if you look at it from the SoC point of view, we're talking about saving power as the different blocks that have been integrated into the SoC interact. And we're talking about how we can save power within the blocks, within subsystems or individual blocks of an SoC device as they are operating.
Now, is there enough power to be saved? I mean, aren't there other areas where you could have much more significant savings? I mean, for example, the power supply design. There you're talking about tens of watts of savings with a more efficient design.
Right. There are significant opportunities to save within the design of the SoC itself. So what we've seen is that you can see savings of single-digit percentage points with techniques applied to layout, applied at the gate level or the synthesis step. Perhaps we can get things that are upwards of between 10-15%. At the architectural level, where you're actually looking at how the execution of the different processing elements within the SoC device are operating, that's where we believe there are savings that are upwards of 80% available in the design. And this is based on a study done by Accelera over the last several years that looked at this potential for power savings. So we think that having an energy processing unit, an EPU, that's focused on looking at very short intervals of processing idle time within the device can harvest out savings that we've seen in early examples that have ranged upwards of 50 to 90% of the energy necessary for these individual operations. And when you can aggregate that across a design, you can see very significant power savings.
Wow, that's very interesting. So in simple terms, what would a design engineer have to know or have to do differently?
So what he would need is, essentially a well-designed hardware approach that can replace the activity that he is already trying to manage with software techniques. He can replace those with much faster, much more deterministic hardware techniques. So in a typical design today, when it comes to power, what you hear about are the examples where people say, oh my gosh, I looked for a power savings opportunity and I actually went into power thrashing in the design, where the amount of power that I attempted to save was exceeded by the amount of power I burned trying to save that power savings. So what we've done with our hardware is we've introduced much faster execution, up to 500 times faster than a software-based approach. We have found lots of shorter intervals of power to be saved, and because it's in hardware, it's far more deterministic. We are able to harvest out that power and not thrash, not waste power in a software-based approach where essentially you're waking up a processor, you're executing on polling exercises to determine whether the hardware within the chip is ready to be shut down, and in the time it takes you to poll, you've lost that moment that you could actually realize the power savings. So hardware, very deterministic, very fast, very efficient then in finding these power savings opportunities. So we're going to replace that in the engineer's approach for his current understanding of where are these opportunities for saving power.
Wow, I was not aware of all that. That's real interesting, and I'm sure we could talk about this for a lot longer, but
yes, we could.
5 minutes. So if somebody's looking for more information, if they want to follow up, where would they go?
They can go to sonicsinc.com and continue to look for additional information and webinars and other events that we expect as we bring out this technology in our product offerings in the future.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for your time, Grant. Like I said, I learned a lot. That was Grant Pierce. He's the president and CEO of Sonix, and I'm Rich Nass with Open Systems Media, and this was this week's 5 Minutes With. Have a great day, Grant.
You too, Rich. Thank you very much.